Hi, thank you for listening in to the This is New Zealand webinar. Thank you very much for registering and listening in. In this webinar, we're going to be covering things like the cost of living in New Zealand, jobs, visas, and also talking about the New Zealand lifestyle. My name is Rachel Beattie, and I'm the Candidate Manager for New Zealand Skills and Demand based here in London. And sitting with me is my colleague Bore Chum, who is the Director of Migration Associates, and he's based out in Christchurch.
Thank you, Rachel, for the introduction. It's so good to have so many people on this webinar, which is really designed to give you enough information regarding the New Zealand lifestyle and what it's like to live in New Zealand. There is a chat room function on your right-hand side. We do encourage you to ask as many questions as possible, and during the webinar, we'll do our best to answer your queries. The schedule of the webinar is as follows. We will go through an overview of New Zealand, which will last approximately 30 minutes. We will then go through how to get a job in New Zealand, which will go through which will take about 10 minutes. We'll go through the New Zealand immigration process, which again will take around 10 minutes, and we will give you the opportunity to have a Q&A session, which will last 5 to 10 minutes. As discussed, if you have any questions, please do use the chat room function. New Zealand in numbers. New Zealand has a population of around 4.7 million, and a third of the population live in Auckland. We have a very multicultural society, which is made up of a lot of different cultures, mainly white European, which is approximately 70%, followed by Indigenous Maori, which is around 14%, Asian population, which is around 11%, and Pacific Islanders, which makes up around 7.6%. We are very accommodating of migrants coming to live in New Zealand, and we're very proud of our multicultural makeup in New Zealand.
Cool, thanks, Bore. So for a lot of you, weather is probably, you want to move somewhere maybe that's a bit more nicer weather-wise. So New Zealand has mild temperatures, moderately high rainfall, and many hours of sunshine throughout most of the country. New Zealand's climate is dominated by the two main geographical features, so that is the mountains and the sea. We are a little bit back to front in New Zealand, I suppose you could say. So for us, our warmest months are in January and February, and then July for us is the coldest month of the year. So in summer, an average sort of maximum temperature can range between 20 and 30 degrees. And in winter, it can be between 10 to 15 degrees, although depending on where you are in the country, it can get, a bit colder as well. So this slide sort of talks more about, I guess the two main cities in New Zealand. So Auckland, which is in the North Island, has a warm, temperate climate with hot, humid summers and mild, damp winters. So you go to Auckland and you sort of feel like you're on holiday all year round because it can be quite humid up there. It is the warmest main centre of New Zealand, and it is also one of the sunniest, with an average of around 2003 sunshine hours. Christchurch, where Bore is based, has a dry, temperate climate with an average daily maximum air temperature of around 22 degrees. That's in the summer months. During winter, it can be a bit colder, around 11 degrees, but it is quite common during the winter that temperatures can fall below 0 degrees at night. So Christchurch is very well known for putting on a good frost in the morning during winter. So yeah, a little bit chillier than Auckland. But this table just gives you an idea basically of the yearly average rainfalls compared with the sunshine hours. So, Auckland, as an example, has quite a high rainfall during the year, but then the sunshine hours sort of, works, is double that. So definitely a lot of sunshine in Auckland. You look at London, where I'm based, The rainfall is a lot less, but the sunshine hours aren't as much as Auckland either, as an example.
Housing. Your lifestyle in New Zealand is going to be influenced by the house that you're going to live in. As you can see, houses in New Zealand are standalone on a section of property, probably around 700 square metres, 600 square metres. Your house will have an indoor and outdoor flow where alfresco dining is outside along with a barbecue, as you can see. It is a big part of the lifestyle in New Zealand, so housing may differ from where you're living, and it's important that you do some research in terms of what the housing makeup is in New Zealand. We would always encourage people to rent when they first get to New Zealand for at least 6 to 12 months. Most rental properties are unfurnished, apart from the normal chattels such as ovens, carpets and curtains. Rent is normally paid weekly, and 4 weeks bond is to be paid. The landlord pays the rates, and therefore this rate's cost is included in the rental price. In some areas, the tenant does not pay for water usage. Okay. Home and contents insurance is always recommended when you're renting. And I think it's really important as part of your research to have a look at these websites. It's trademe.co.nz/property and realestate.co.nz. These websites will give you pictorially an example of the rental market in terms of what you can get, but will also give you the availability of rental property around the country. Please note we will be following up this webinar with these useful websites, but do take a note of them and jump on them once the webinar is finished. As with most countries, weekly rental prices will differ depending on where you live. So if you're living in Auckland, the rental property and the cost of rent is going to be a lot higher when compared with somewhere like Invercargill, which is the bottom of the South Island. These are average weekly rental prices. So for an example, in Auckland Central, you're looking at 875 New Zealand dollars for a 3-bedroom house. That's a weekly cost when compared with 427 New Zealand dollars in Christchurch. It is really important that you do look at where you're going to be obtaining that job offer and do some research on rental prices and look at what you get for your money in terms of how big that property is. This is just a guideline in an average, but the best thing to do is get on those websites in the previous slide to have a look what the market is doing. In terms of buying a home and just an explanation of generically about the homes in New Zealand, most open homes are standalone and built of wood. Okay. Most do not have central heating or double glazing. It really does depend on the age and location. A lot of the newer houses do have that central heating and double glazing. Okay. In order to purchase a house, there are special property features in the Wednesday and Saturday papers, and also open homes in the weekends and on weekdays where you can actually go into the house and have a good look around to get a feel for the house. When purchasing a house, you need to ensure that you meet special conditions in order to purchase the house. This includes getting a building report, getting a limb report and a title inspection by your solicitor, and also making sure that you meet the finance clause in terms of are you able to afford and is a bank willing to lend you money to purchase the house. One key difference in New Zealand is that we do have no chains, and that really does affect the purchasing of a house, and you can get a house as quickly as 4 weeks in New Zealand. So really important that you do get legal advice in purchasing a house, and the house purchasing process can be quite straightforward when both vendor and purchaser come to a meeting of minds. When you're looking to purchase a house, auction is a very common way of buying and selling. Okay, and you must go to the table with all your conditions met to purchase that house. The median house prices, as you can see, will also differ from region to region. It's no surprise that the median house price in Auckland is the highest at around $870,000. You can expect any houses, some houses in Auckland to fetch at least $1 million. So this is just an average. Whereas in Christchurch, for example, the median house price is around $439,000. Okay, so our advice is to have a look at those websites, contact real estate agents, and get a feel for what that property you're looking at may go for. On those websites, you are able to look at houses by looking at the maximum and minimum amounts that you would pay to give you an idea of what houses are up for sale in that price bracket.
Cool. So healthcare. New Zealand public health system does provide free public hospital treatments, healthcare during pregnancy and childbirth, as well as subsidies on GP visits and prescription medicines. There are 40 public hospitals throughout New Zealand, so wherever you are in the country, there's never, a hospital's not too far away. We also have something which is a really good, I think it's excellent that we have this. It's called the Accident Compensation Corporation, or as all us Kiwis call it for short, ACC. So basically, your employer will pay, part of your wages will be paid to ACC. So if you were to have, if you were out in New Zealand playing rugby or touch rugby in the weekend and you injure yourself, you can claim from the ACC while you're off work, and that the claim you can make is up to 80% of your income. So I know that for a lot of, for example, tradies here in the UK, they need to take out their own sort of private insurance. This is something that they would be able to claim under if an injury occurred either at work or, in your own personal time. Private healthcare, though, is available in New Zealand, and a lot of Kiwis do elect to have private health insurance. It's quite handy if you've got something that's come up that you want to get treated for straight away. There are a wide range of insurance policies with different premiums, so it is worthwhile just having a look at different providers, getting some quotes. But even if you do have private healthcare, you are entitled to use the free public health system. That's no problem. And a really good website to look at is healthfunds.org.nz, and that will give you more information on private healthcare providers. So this table gives you just an idea of, sort of the average cost. It is a bit of a guide. It will differ depending on where you are in the country. So, for example, if you've got children under the years of 6, then a lot of doctors won't charge for, their GP visits, prescriptions, things like that. As soon as you turn 7, then obviously there will be charges involved. So, you're looking at around $10 up to $25. But as I said, it does really depend on where you are in the country. Subsidised prescriptions, so, the government does sort of pay towards that, but there is still a cost involved, and it can, as I say, vary depending on where you are. And the dentist is slightly more expensive in New Zealand. So I know my colleague, she used to live in Auckland. She'd pay around $90 for a checkup, whereas down in Christchurch, you probably would pay around $75. So I would definitely recommend getting a bit of a checkup before you make the move to New Zealand, just to, make things a bit easier for you.
Thanks, Rachel. Education. Across the board, from early childhood to primary and to secondary school education, and then moving into post-secondary school higher education, we have a fantastic education system in New Zealand. Schooling is compulsory from the ages of 6 to 16, but most kids actually start on their 5th birthday, which is quite unique. Free secular education is available, along with private education. Our years run from year 1 to year 13. And when you're looking to purchase a house, it's important to understand whether or not the school is zoned. And what that means is if you live in a certain catchment, you will be able to apply to schools depending on where you live. So that may affect the house price. So if there's some good schools in that area and you're looking to purchase in that area, the cost of that housing may be expensive because you're zoned for those schools. Our term dates start from the end of January to mid-April, which is term 1. Most of the kids come back after the school holidays and that Christmas break very refreshed, and parents can't wait to get their kids in school. The next term is April, late April to the beginning of July. And then term 3 is middle of July to the middle of September. And the fourth and most tiring term is mid-October to mid-December. So the term dates may differ from your country. And, I think the key thing is that there is that big break in between December and January where a lot of kids will be holidaying with their family and enjoying that nice summer that New Zealand offers and, the outdoor lifestyle. You'll see that we've broken it up here between primary, intermediate and high school. Some schools in rural areas will combine all three, whereas if you go into the cities, you'll find that most are just primary or a mixture of primary and intermediate. Primary school runs from year 1 to year 6, whereas intermediate is year 7 to year 8, and high school is from year 9 to year 13, culminating in NZEA level 3, which in the UK is equivalent to GCEA A levels. Okay, so that's a bit of the framework there, and I would encourage you, if you're looking to make the move, get on the phone and speak to principals and understand where your children will fit in. Most schools will be willing to speak to you and explain the system to you, and I wouldn't worry about whether or not your kids are coming at the start of the year, middle of the year or end of the year. Most schools are very accommodating to migrant families, and they will do the utmost to fit your child into where they think they should be in the New Zealand curriculum. In terms of post-secondary school education and higher education, we have 8 universities and 20 polytechnics and institutes of technology. Once you've got permanent residency, a student loan is available to pay for that tuition. Please note that the government do subsidise the fees for university and higher education. We try to give you an example of what it would cost to do 1 year of an arts degree. It's approximately 3,000 New Zealand dollars, whereas if you're looking to do a medical degree, it's around 10,000 New Zealand dollars. I think this is very competitive when compared to other countries, and certainly I think universities and higher education is a lot more accessible to a lot of people in New Zealand because of the population. So I know in the UK, there are a lot of universities, there are a lot of wait lists, and you may not be able to get into certain universities because the demand is very high. So because of that reason, I do think New Zealand schools and schooling is very accessible, and because of the population, there's the less demand, and therefore hopefully you should be able to get what you enroll for. Again, some useful websites to get some information about the schooling system is listed there. We will be sending these websites out to you after this webinar.
Great, thanks, Bore. So with living in New Zealand, we love our cars in New Zealand. We're a very car-heavy nation. We do rely a lot on our vehicles. So one of the things that you would need to do first once you get out there is look at buying yourself a car to get yourself around. In New Zealand, the minimum age to apply for your driver's license is 16. And there are 3 stages of getting your license. So there's your learner's license, which is basically when you do your test, your theory test to begin with. You then go for your restricted license, which is when you can actually start driving around, and you do a bit of a test for that. There is quite a long wait before going for your full license. So there are actually defensive driving courses that you can take to shorten that wait time. I think it takes it from 12 months down to 6 months. So if you do a defensive driving course, then you can then go for your full license. once you've got your full license, you can basically drive without any restrictions, and yeah, it just makes life a lot easier. But if you hold a current and valid overseas driver's license, you can drive for a period of 12 months from the date that you arrive into New Zealand. I know that does apply for the UK licenses. So if you're from another part of the world, then I would always recommend just double checking with the AA. But when the time comes that you do need to swap over to a Kiwi driver's license, all that is needed is your current and valid driver's license. You need to fill out an application form. You may need to do an eye test, and then you also just need to pay the licensing fee, which is around $160. Depending on where your license is issued from, you may need to do further driving tests.
The cost of living. I think this is a really important aspect of living in New Zealand and trying to understand the true cost of living in New Zealand. I think the first point is that you should avoid trying to do a conversion in your local currency to New Zealand. The cost of living, I think, is based on your purchasing power, and what I mean by that is the money that you've got left over from wages, and in comparison to the cost of actual living in New Zealand. So it's very difficult to get a spreadsheet together and really get an understanding. It's once you're in New Zealand, you'll get a feel for it. You'll get a feel for what's left over and the cost there. But we'll try to give you as much a bit of a glimpse in terms of what the cost of living is like in New Zealand, so that you can go away and do a bit of research. It's important to note that some things will be more expensive in New Zealand due to the lack of consumer power and distance. You know, we are 2 islands in the South Pacific. Our next country that's close to us is our good friends, the Aussies. And therefore, because that less population, some things may be a lot more expensive. However, some things may be a lot cheaper also. So just doing your research and understanding what is more expensive and what is cheaper is going to be very important for you to get that understanding of the cost of living in New Zealand. We have GST in New Zealand, which is at 15% on goods. That's the equivalent of that in the UK. So when you pick something up in New Zealand and it's got a price label, say $1, that GST is included in that price on that goods or that service. New Zealand tax rates on personal income are progressive and are less than the OECD average. So we're pretty competitive in terms of our tax rate on the personal income that we would earn. In terms of general cost, try to just give you an idea of some examples. Petrol is around $2.20 per litre. A postal stamp to the UK is around $2.20 New Zealand dollars. A good flat white coffee in New Zealand is around $5 New Zealand dollars. A warrant of fitness, which is very similar to your MOT in the UK, is around 50 to 60 New Zealand dollars for 6 months. And your car tax or car registration is $176 to $233 on a yearly basis. So just some examples. In terms of a washing machine, front loaders are from anywhere between $800 to $3,000. So this is an example where things are a little bit more expensive, in my opinion, and a top loader is around $500 to around $1,600 New Zealand dollars. So you might think, you know, if you're in the UK and you purchase a front loader, you can get you probably get one for about £300 to £400 from Currys. You know, so some things could be a little bit cheaper in New Zealand. I do think that televisions are cheaper in New Zealand. So you're looking at a 40-inch Panasonic around the 650 mark, whereas with a Samsung you're looking at just over $1,000. I would encourage you to visit Harvey Norman and the website there. That's very similar to Currys, to give you a UK example, where there's a lot of home appliances and bits and pieces that you can pick up. If you go to that website, it will give you a really good understanding of the cost of certain things in New Zealand, which may give you a bit of an idea of what's available and the cost of that in New Zealand. In terms of a grocery comparison, again, we've tried to give you a bit of an example here. We went to Countdown, which is a very popular supermarket in New Zealand, and we've tried to compare those Countdown to some of the popular supermarkets in the UK, South Africa, and Canada. We bought some milk, bread, eggs, butter, tea bags, pasta, cooking oil, apples, potatoes, lamb chops, because we're in New Zealand, laundry powder, potato chips or crisps, and some Oyster Bay wine. And in New Zealand, that came up to a total of around 75 New Zealand dollars. In the UK, shopping at Tesco, very similar. So there's not much in it when compared to going to the UK and shopping. Whereas it was certainly cheaper to go to South Africa and buy those bits and pieces in South Africa. And whereas with Canada, it was more expensive. So a bit of a mix there, and quite interesting. But I think in New Zealand, you don't buy you can buy fruit, vegetables, meat, and all your groceries in a supermarket, but a lot of Kiwis tend to go to fresh produce places and purchase their fruit and vegetables. I know that my wife likes to go to those shops where we save probably about $20 to $30 per week. And a lot of people also shop at the butcher separately. What you've got to realise is that New Zealand's a village. It's very easy to get around, and you will have time to be able to do that selective shopping where you will save money.
So why move? Well, we've got a couple of stats here, which I really, really like. It shows why you should consider New Zealand as a place to go to. In the 2017 Mercer Quality of Life Survey, Auckland was ranked number 3 in the world, and that was based on 39 factors, including housing, recreation, education, and political environment. There was also another Mercer Cost of Living survey, and Auckland was ranked number 61, where the most expensive city is ranked number 1. And just, I guess, as a bit of a comparison, London, where I'm based, was ranked number 29. Wellington is number 86, and then Sydney, across the ditch in Australia, was number 24. But the last point, which I quite like, is in 2017 Transparency International survey, New Zealand was rated joint number 1 with Denmark for the least corrupt country in the world.
Fantastic. Thanks, Rachel. I mean, some really good stats there. And I think there's some other things that you need to consider about making this move. I mean, I think economy-wise, our economy is very robust at the minute. We are outperforming our neighbours in Australia, which is very rare. And because of that performing economy, the job growth in New Zealand is expected to continue. And that's why we are looking for skilled migrants to fill many roles across different sectors in New Zealand. So there's a forecast there that we're going to be needing at least 150,000 people more in the workforce by mid-2019. And that's a lot of people. And we need to source those people from somewhere, especially in sectors such as construction and healthcare. In terms of, we've gone through education, New Zealand 15-year-olds scored ahead of those in the UK on reading, maths and science in a report by the UN in 2015. So our education system for children and for young adults is very robust and recognised around the world. In terms of our social political stability, I think, it's a very stable country. There's not a lot of corruption, and the direction that we have in terms of, the development that's going in New Zealand means that gives you that assurances for you and your family that the place is going somewhere, the country's going somewhere, and will provide you with those opportunities. It's safe, and it's just such a fantastic place to live. In terms of our landscape, it's just so beautiful. I mean, Milford Sound, if you've been to New Zealand, was voted in 2018 as the top travel destination in the world, and no matter where you are in the South Island and the North Island, you're so entrenched in that landscape. It's such a big part of New Zealand, and you will use that, and you'll just become outdoor people. Your kids will have that time to go mountain biking, to go tramping, etc. and lead that lifestyle, that work-life balance that you're looking for. In terms of population, you know, if I give you an example, our land mass is the same size as the UK, but we've only got 4.7 million when compared to 63 million in the UK. And what that really means to you is that there's so much space in New Zealand, and things don't take too long to get to. And I think that's really important, because you want to maximize the time once you finish work to get to places, to enjoy that lifestyle and have that work-life balance. In terms of innovation, you know, at the minute, our Prime Minister is a woman, and we were the first country to give women the vote. So we're very progressive, and we are forward thinkers, and it's such a privilege to be in a country that, you know, allows and I guess recognises people's rights, etc. So we're very, very proud of that.
Cool. So why move? We've got a couple of quotes here. So no matter where you are in New Zealand, you are approximately 15 minutes from somewhere spectacularly beautiful, which I think is very true. And then we've also got a quote from Roger Stone, who is someone that we helped through New Zealand Skills in Demand a few years ago. And Roger said, we're about 30 minutes drive from the beach and just over an hour from the ski field. So, you know, it's great how you can sort of get the best of both worlds.
I mean, Roger was from Birmingham in the UK, and he's now living just outside of Christchurch in a place called Rolleston. He's purchased a piece of land and he's managed to build a house for him and his family. He made the comment that he would never be able to do that in the UK. You know, so many opportunities for migrants to have a great lifestyle, to buy that piece of land and build on it. And those opportunities are real and are available to you, should you, you know, look to make the move out to New Zealand. So this slide I think is fantastic. I think it shows that period of time between December and January when you're away on holiday with your family. There is a high likelihood that you'll be at a beach. There's a high likelihood you'll be in a holiday home. There's a high likelihood you'll be drinking wine, beer, and having a barbecue with your friends and family and just relaxing. You may have a friend that may have a boat, and you'll go skiing or water skiing, fishing, and you may have a friend that may have a batch for that holiday home. So this is quintessential New Zealand, and I think this is why people are looking to make the move in New Zealand, because of that Kiwi lifestyle, the work-life balance, and the ability to enjoy some quality time with your family and just put your phone down and have that quality time with your family. So most people making this move to actually have this that better lifestyle. And I think this slide shows what lifestyle is in New Zealand for you and your family.
Perfect. So what I'm going to do is talk to you about how do I find work in New Zealand. So the background of New Zealand Skills in Demand, we are a New Zealand run company. We have full-time UK presence. So myself, Rachel Beattie, and my colleague Susanna Dyson, we're based here in London. And then out in New Zealand in Christchurch, we've got our General Manager, Walter Wilson, who he's recently come on board and he's working on establishing new relationships with companies and also just assisting new arrivals into the country as well. It's always nice to just have that, friendly voice down the end of the phone if you've got any questions. We work with large and reputable and well-established New Zealand companies. And in the last 7 years that we've been running, we've successfully placed over 500 candidates into work in New Zealand. So where it all began, we as a company, we were set up after the Canterbury earthquake back in February 2011. For New Zealand, that was quite it was just a major event that no one saw coming. Because there was so much damage, it is, a long-term project. It's costing us around $40 billion and it's, likely to take at least 10 to 15 years to fix. 6 years on from the major quake, and we're sort of halfway through the rebuild. I know a lot of key things have been fixed already, but there's still a lot of key projects to be done. We needed thousands more skilled tradespeople in New Zealand to help with the rebuild, because we didn't have enough tradespeople in New Zealand to keep up with the demand. And the central city, which was badly damaged, is to be largely redeveloped and rebuilt. So there are a lot of key anchor projects that have been finished, and that there's also more projects coming up. So, you know, entertainment centres, a new police station. I know the hospital's having work done to it. So there is a lot of work still going on. There were a lot of new homes that were needing to be built in the next few years as well. A lot of residential houses were damaged during the earthquake. So, you know, it's not just the commercial side, it's also the residential as well. We also had a lot of damage to the horizontal infrastructure. So there have been massive repairs done so far, but, you know, with anything, there will always be stuff needing to be done as well. So, you know, Christchurch is where we got our start because of the need for skilled tradespeople. But it's not just Christchurch that, you know, there's a lot of work going on. There is also a lot of work going on around the country as well. And one of our main employers, I mean, they've got projects happening up in Auckland and Tauranga, pretty much all over the country down, you know, to Dunedin, Queenstown way. So there is definitely a lot of work out in New Zealand currently. So just a few examples. I mean, Auckland and Tauranga, they've got a huge population growth. So residential and commercial building consents have reached their highest annual total in over a decade. Especially in Auckland, the residential activity is really encouraging, as it forecasts that in 2017 more homes would have been built in Auckland than ever before. I know that they just sort of at the moment can't really keep up with demand. And last year for Tauranga was absolutely massive. From October to December alone, residential and commercial building consents were worth around $230 million, which is just massive for, you know, that's just Tauranga by itself. That's not even the rest of the country or Auckland. So definitely a lot of growth going on. I mean, this is just the construction industry, but obviously that, you know, there's a bit of a ripple effect with that as well, and needing other workers. So you're probably thinking, what do I need to get a job in New Zealand? The first thing I would recommend is an up-to-date CV, and we do have a New Zealand CV template that we can send you. It's always good to have it up-to-date, clear and concise. You know, normally we say 2 pages, 3 at the most. So yeah, if you need a CV template, please do get in touch. We also request a CBD from you, which is a candidate briefing document, and that basically just gives us a bit of background information as to your timeframes, who's making the move, you know, any other bits of information that we need to be able to help. We also ask for written references from your former employers and, you know, any clients, and we also get contact details because we can do verbal references as well. The verbal references we don't do until we've got your permission to call your reference. We don't like to surprise anyone. And we also ask for electronic copies of all your qualifications. We ask for all this information because when we set you up with an interview, we basically send all this information over in a nice recruitment pack. We also need your Skype username, because we don't, you know, you don't need to fly out to New Zealand for face-to-face interviews. We do set you up with a Skype interview. So we need your username. And probably the most, I think, important part of the process is understanding and commencing the visa process. You know, it's really important to understand what your visa options are, how long it's going to take you to get that visa, and just, you know, making sure that you've got a really good understanding so that the employer in New Zealand also can be confident that you know, understand what you're doing and how to go about getting out to New Zealand. So New Zealand Skills in Demand, we are quite trade focused. These are some roles that we can help with. We do also help with chartered accountants and IT professionals, and sort of more white collar roles like site and project managers. If you do work in the trade industry and your occupation isn't on this list, then please do feel free to get in touch, because demand is changing all the time, and you never know, something might come up and we can help you put you in touch with an employer. And for the others, if your occupation's not on here and you might not be in the trades, then normally we say Seek and Trade Me can be two quite good websites to have a look at as well for work out in New Zealand. So this is just, I guess, giving you an idea of the process and what you need to do before you make the move out. Firstly, and I guess you're doing that now by listening to this webinar, learn about New Zealand, decide that this is what you want to do, and, also overcome any potential issues. Do you have a house to sell? Do you have a business that maybe you need to close down or sell before you make the move? Do you have any, elderly family members that need to be okay with you leaving? New Zealand is, it is far away, so it's always good to overcome these issues before you go. Work out when you want to arrive in New Zealand. We sort of work to a 3-month time frame. So once you've got your job offer, the employer likes you to be out in New Zealand within 3 months. And this should give you enough time to apply for your visa as well. So once you know what month you want to be out in New Zealand, 3 months before that, that's when we start getting, all your documents together. You'll talk to a visa agent like Migration Associates, and then, we'll start setting you up with an interview. Gather all your documents required by Skills in Demand and send them through. That the sooner we get your information, the sooner we can proceed, basically. So the quicker we get things, the easier it does make it. So we always just say send everything through when you can. If you're under 31, get your working holiday visa, or if you're over 31 and going out on a work visa, then, talk to Bore and his team at Migration Associates, because it's good to obviously find out your information about the visa process and what your visa options are. And also, we've got a few partners that we can put you in touch with. So, get in touch with us if you've got questions about shipping and, money transfer, because we can certainly point you in the right direction. And then, it's easier said than done, booking your tickets and getting on the plane. Obviously, it's a big process, but I think that's definitely the exciting part of the process. And just here are our contact details. Obviously, after the seminar, you will be sent our contact details. So if you do have any questions, feel free to get in touch with either Walter, Susanna, or myself. If you do want, the New Zealand CV template, or you think that we might be able to help with your job search, please do get in touch with us, because we would, definitely be keen to hear from you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Rachel. Listen, getting a job offer is going to be a very important part of the process, and the job market in New Zealand is very buoyant across all sectors. So I would encourage you to get in contact with New Zealand Skills in Demand, send them your CV, and they will give you an honest appraisal in terms of whether or not they can help you. If they're unable to help you, they will point you in the right direction. So I think it's really important that you do engage with them. They'll be able to help as much as they can. In terms of the visa process, the policy at the minute in place in New Zealand is very job-led, which means that most of you will need to get a job offer. The context in New Zealand, the immigration side of things, is that our net immigration figure has been the highest for years, which means that there's more people coming in and staying in New Zealand. Because of that, there's been a lot of demand on services and real estate and housing. The reason why there's so much construction is that we just don't have enough houses in New Zealand. So because of that, the government are trying to stem that flow of migrants and trying to reduce the numbers. And in the last 12 to 18 months, there has been a change by the government on policy to reduce those numbers. So our advice with, the change in policy in immigration is to get advice on your visa eligibility. Okay. Migration Associates, well, just a little bit about ourselves. We started in the UK and have a UK office in Guildford where 3 permanent staff members are working there. And in the last 2 years, we've set up a New Zealand branch in Christchurch. In total, we have 4 licensed immigration advisors, 1 in the UK and 3 in New Zealand. We've assisted over 2,000 families and individuals to live and work in New Zealand. One of our unique selling points is that we specialise in New Zealand immigration only. So we really understand the process and we have a strategic relationship with New Zealand Skills on Demand, because in most cases you will need a job offer to get through the process. We think it starts with understanding your eligibility, and we're able to give you a New Zealand visa evaluation, which will detail your eligibility, will confirm the costs and the timeframes, and we will be able to answer a lot of your questions regarding that visa process. So if you haven't already done so, please complete our online visa evaluation form. Once you complete that, one of our licensed immigration advisors will be in contact with you to run through your circumstances, and that will culminate in us completing a New Zealand visa evaluation for you. And I think that is the starting point for you. You need to understand the process which applies to you. We're able to also give a lot of certainty to New Zealand Skills on Demand regarding your eligibility, in which we furnish them an immigration report, which pretty much details that, Joe Bloggs is able to apply for a work visa that should be processed within 4 weeks, and he should be able to arrive within 8 to 12 weeks of that job offer. Okay, so our success rate is quite high because of this process right from the beginning to ensure that you're actually eligible for the visa. I'm just going to run through some of the visa types. The first one is the skilled migrant category, and that's a residency visa category. A lot of people would have heard about this category. It's points-based. You'll get points for qualifications, age, work experience, job offer. In most cases, it's dependent on a job offer. You've got to be between the ages of 20 and 55, meet the character requirements and the health criteria. You must score 160 points to lodge an expression of interest, and once you're able to do that, you'll be in the selection pool and then selected to apply for residency. Once you've lodged your application to Immigration New Zealand, you're looking at anywhere between 1 to 4 months processing time. In some cases, it could be up to 6 months. And like I said, there's been some recent changes in October 2016 and August 2017. And I would not be surprised if there are further changes just to update the policy settings to reflect the economy and the demand for skilled migrants in New Zealand. Another visa that will lead and give you a pathway to residency is the work to residency visa with an accredited employer. You must have a job offer which is full-time and valid for 2 years or more. The employer must be accredited. You must be earning at least $55,000 based on a 40-hour week. You must meet the health and character requirements. Once you've worked for that employer for 2 years, you can then apply for residency. Okay, and it's approved within 15 working days. I think this visa is a fantastic visa if you're single or you're a couple and you don't have children. If you've got children, I still think it's a fantastic visa, but you may want to look at the skilled migrant category to get residency a lot quicker. Okay, but we would go through that with you, make sure you understand the differences and the approach that we would, obviously take with you. If you've got a job offer today, there is a high likelihood that you'll be applying for a work visa under the Essential Skills Work Visa policy. The reason why you do that is that these applications are processed within 4 weeks on lodgement. You must have an offer of employment with a New Zealand employer meet the qualification and work experience requirements for that role. So have qualifications or work experience related to the role. There must be no New Zealand citizens or residents available for the role, which is the labour market test. Again, you must meet the health and character requirements. The validity or the length of the visa will be dependent on the skill level of the occupation. So you may get a 12-month, 3-year or 5-year visa. If you go to New Zealand on a work visa and you're employed by employer A, you can move and work for employer B. You just need to apply for a variation. So you're not stuck with one employer. There is flexibility to move, and that would require you to either apply for a variation or a new work visa. And again, we'll go through that with you. Like I said before, process within 20 working days. Some recent changes in terms of work visas in Canterbury and also nationwide. So again, alluding to that backdrop of New Zealand immigration policy, policy settings are being tweaked by the government to ensure that it keeps up to pace with what we need in terms of a migrant workforce. For those of you who are under 31, your country may have a working holiday visa scheme. I've put an example up there in terms of British citizens under the age of 31. If you're British, you'll be able to apply for a working holiday visa, which doesn't require you to have a job offer. It's a 23-month or a 12-month visa is available. The purpose is to holiday. However, you can work for 12 months on a fixed-term contract. Once you're in New Zealand and you do get a full-time contract, you can convert from a working holiday visa to a work visa or residency at a later date. So it's a very good stepping stone visa to use to elongate your period of time in New Zealand and hopefully get residency if that's what you want. You can work in any occupation, and generally it's approved within 2 to 5 days. So we would always encourage anyone under 31, British or any other country of citizenship that's got the working holiday scheme with New Zealand to apply for a working holiday visa. We think it's the best thing to do to arrive and have that right to work. So one of the things that we do is we create an immigration strategy for you. It's really important to understand how the visas work together, understand the cost and the timeframes so that you can budget, and how the visas all intertwine. So for instance, if you've got a job offer tomorrow, you might apply for a work visa alongside the residency visa under the skilled migrant category, or you may have a working holiday visa and you may look to apply for the work visa. So don't always look at your visa in the short term. Try to look at the long-term plan and put that strategy in place, and we can help you with that. And by having an immigration strategy in place, it will just give you peace of mind in terms of what the future holds for you in New Zealand. Medicals, police certificates, and occupational registration. Okay, you must have an acceptable standard of health. So I would always encourage everyone to go to the GP and get a general checkup. Only get your medical once you've got a job offer, because they're only valid for 3 months. And those medicals must be obtained by a panel of doctors. So in your country, there'll be certain practitioners that are able to give New Zealand medicals, and you'll need to get and book those medicals. So for some of you, you may have to travel a bit to get to that practitioner. In terms of character, you can obtain that police certificate. It's valid for 6 months, but it's really important that you do disclose any previous criminal convictions. Failure to do so may mean that your application and future applications could be declined. Okay, so we've all done things that we're not proud of, but please make sure you are honest and disclose any previous misdemeanors. For some of us, the visa process is made a lot more harder by having to obtain occupational registration. To name a couple of occupations such as nurses, teachers, plumbers, electricians, and gas fitters, you must obtain registration from the Occupational Registration Board in New Zealand to legally work in these occupations. A word of warning, it is an extra step in the visa process, which can result in more costs and complexity in terms of timeframes. Okay, it's really important to note that New Zealand employers will only consider you once you've obtained your registration. So speak to us, we'll advise you whether or not registration applies to you, and it's important to start that process because some of the processes can take up to 6 months to complete. So you need to understand this because that's going to impact your timeframes in terms of making that move out to New Zealand. So why use us? It's important to clarify that you are able to do this visa yourself. Okay, there's nothing stopping you doing so, but I can't guarantee whether or not you apply for the right visa and whether or not the visa will go through smoothly. We are licensed by the IAA, and because of our knowledge, our success rate is quite high, and we're able to ensure that there's less delays for our clients. Because of that whole New Zealand visa evaluation process, we only take on clients that we think can get through the process. Okay, we will provide you with assistance to ensure documents will be that are submitted will be accepted by Immigration New Zealand. Because of our experience, we know exactly what the immigration are looking for. We will also liaise with Immigration New Zealand and your employer on your behalf. It's really important that you note that Immigration New Zealand are not always right. Okay, and therefore having an advisor will ensure that they make the right decision on your application. And for some of our clients, it meant that they're able to get that, whereas before their applications were heading towards that decline. So we were able to advocate for our clients to make sure they got the right result. And if Immigration New Zealand made a mistake, they were pulled up for it. We'll create an immigration strategy with you. Our team love the paperwork because we need to get that paperwork correct. Okay, in the long term, will save you time, money, and limit your stress level. Bear in mind that if you are a family or you're busy, you may not have the time to actually understand this visa process, and that's what you're paying us for us to tell you exactly what you need to do, and that will cut down time for you and also allow you to spend time on other matters in the move. Okay, and I think the most important thing is we'll also push you along the process to minimise delays. So if you don't have the right documents, we're not going to submit your application until you've got the right documents. So we're just here to make sure the process goes through smoothly, and it's really a big benefit of us having a UK office and a New Zealand office, because a lot of our clients who then go to New Zealand would then be in contact with our New Zealand office, and it's a true end-to-end service that we can provide our clients. We'd always encourage you to book a consultation with an immigration advisor. It is the biggest decision you will make. So sit down with someone, understand your eligibility, your costs and timeframes, and most importantly, I think, have all your queries addressed before deciding making this move. Okay. Once you have those queries addressed, I think you're in a better position and you feel a bit more confident on what is, a very scary move for you and your family. Just get that assurances that this can be done and that you're getting the right visas. Okay. I think what you're doing today is fantastic. Link to both Migration Associates and New Zealand Skills and Demand's social media channels, getting as much information on what's happening. It could be anything from what projects are going on in New Zealand, or how the economy is going. That will give you that information about New Zealand. A lot of this information is very available at the tip of your fingers these days. So stay in touch and stay tuned. In terms of the next steps, contact us to get your visa evaluation. So email us and we'll provide you with our email addresses. Contact New Zealand Skills and Demand with the job search. Again, they will give you an honest appraisal of whether or not they can assist you. Guys, I can't emphasize, do research, understand the areas you want to live in, your timeframes. The more research you can do, the easier it's going to get. As I said before, connect on social media, get some information. And if you've enjoyed the webinar, please do leave us a Facebook, some feedback. We're going to move into our Q&A session now. Once we've had this, once the webinar is finished, we'll provide you some more information and the next steps. Okay, and we just want to lastly leave you with a photo of New Zealand. Beautiful Southern Alps, heaps of space, and I think that really encapsulates New Zealand very much.
Yep, no, it just, living in London, it definitely, looking at this just reminds me of home and the peace and the quiet and how much space we're lucky to have out in New Zealand. So it's definitely a move that, there's a lot to do and there's a lot involved, but once you get out there, you'd never regret it. So Thank you very much for listening into the webinar. What Bore and I will do now is, have the live Q&A. So please do send through your questions and we'll answer those. But on behalf of Bore and myself, Rachel, thank you very much for attending the webinar. Please do send through any questions that you have. But we'll end the webinar now and move on to the live Q&A.